Let's see. When Henry started this walk at age 32 in 1849, he wore a broad-brimmed hat designed with a miniature shelf to hold flowers he found. He dressed in an earthen-toned three-piece suit and always carried his spyglass for birdwatching. His knapsack was rigged with a compartment for his books, one for pressing flowers, his sewing materials, his fishing line, and a handful of fishing hooks. He walked with an umbrella tilted over his shoulder to keep the sand and wind off his neck, and with a special walking stick doubling as a ruler he used to measure plants. He used a goose quill pen with which he wrote in luxurious horizontal flourishes. His Y's look wind-blown, and the crosses of his T's like distant hills. He packed salt for seasoning, sugar and tea, and a junk of heavy cake with plums in it. He was a sinewy, exercised country saunterer, handsomely dressed and carrying with him all the items for misadventure, like a flowery battleship. Whereas I, standing on the Nauset Dunes, this is in Cape Cod, on the Nauset Dunes and staring out at the open palm of the Atlantic, looked as if I'd just disembarked a red-eye and had a deep misunderstanding of the current season. The cold May wind seized my legs, exposed beneath my bathing suit, but I was sweating from the waist up under two shirts, a sweater, a rain jacket, and a winter hat. Henry wore special boots that he slathered with paraffin. My shoes were held together with duct tape. The sand wore this tape away in the first mile before filleting the soles off the shoes completely. So I tied the shoes to my backpack, which meant that in the next couple of days, the dozens of miles of sand would need blisters between my toes, on the uppermost part of my arch, and weirdly, on the very tops of both my big toes. But the worst was the sun. I hadn't packed any sunscreen, and because summer in New England comes like a gunshot after winter, my calves would go from ice white to red by the time I stumbled to a stranger's house in Wellfleet many hours later, knocking on the door and hoping for a place to sleep because, as it turned out, I'd also forgotten my sleeping bag in my rush to escape my own bed. The beach is a vast morgue, wrote Henry, where famished dogs may range in packs and crows come daily to glean the pittance which the tide leaves them. You usually come to the seashore to spend a day with the broad wings of sand flaking your sides and the fan of ocean in front. You dash into the water a few times. Beaches aren't known or loved for hiking because, as I soon realized, they offer a monotonous, unchanging landscape. On my left, for miles, 100 feet of red sand and clay peeking into a salt-killed rim of bayberry, huckleberry, and the odd scrub pine wherein a song sparrow trilled the famous first notes of Beethoven's Fifth. To my right, the flat sea, profound at first, but unremarkable thereafter. And so my eyes fell to the ground, to this vast morgue, to see what items the ocean had returned to the shore that morning. Beaches do have a tang of fate. The smooth stones, the ring stones, the tired driftwood, the dead loon, crook-necked with a constellation of white dots on its black feathers, seemed there for a reason. The Legos, this cow femur, wooden chair, 3 pennies whose Lincolns had worn to blurry portraits, a nickel reduced to the size and thinness of a dime, a Red Sox hat, a Patriots hat, fish vertebrae, and a bullet shell whose tip had filigreed to metal lacework. I walked for over an hour before I saw another person, a bird watcher, with his telescope set up in the middle of the beach. We talked dead loons, northern gannets, and what shorebirds are migrating. Even with the long pauses of strangers meeting, I was happy for the distraction as it momentarily halted the conveyor belt of sadness that the dream was still moving through me. I'd rather dream of the bizarre ships sent from my subconscious, the ones floating on waves of anxiety and fear, those two-headed snake dreams, those of my teeth going soft, of my house filled with small, sharp-toothed rodents. I'd rather the puzzles, images to be interpreted, distanced by a measure of analysis and rephrased for the daylight. What I'd gotten the previous night was different. Here was a real person, put in material textures of everyday life. More like an experience, a memory, not a puzzle floating on anything, just a cold dunk in the sea itself. And that's why now I was clinging to the birder, thrashing at him with questions about migratory routes of the loon. Thank you.